Hi, everybody. Thank you for bearing with us. It was, we had a few technical difficulties, but we are ready to begin. I'd like to thank you all for joining us. I know that we are all going through a rather difficult time with this pandemic, the stay-at-home orders, schools being closed. And during this time, I feel that we are called, sorry, lights just went out. Okay, I believe that we're called even more strongly to lead. And in leadership during times of crisis, there are challenges that perhaps we don't always experience in our everyday roles as leaders, whether we're leaders of schools, whether we're leaders of curriculum planning and programming, whether we're leaders in our classroom environments. We lead every day with confidence and a comfort and ability with and trust within ourselves for what we know. We're experts at what we're doing and leading. And yet in the time of crisis, we're not exactly experts. And so we have different types of feelings that are going on. And some of those feelings really have to do with simply the pandemic that we're experiencing and our own securities or insecurities regarding where we're going, because there's so much that is unknown. And yet, we are still leaders. And today we're here to focus on how we are going to lead and learn with our heart, kindness, and compassion. The first thing we would like to do is inspire. During this time of crisis, inspiring others is critical. And through that inspiration, you need to connect with yourself and inspire yourself. As a leader, it's one of our most critical tools to be able to inspire others in something innovative and new so that they join with you and walk with you onto a different path is very important. Magdalena, I don't know. We also look to empower. We want to empower everyone who is walking that path with us. Empowerment means giving your team members the ability and the faith in themselves through the trust they have in you and your leadership to also move forward. When you have inspired and you empower, next, what you're doing is illuminating the vision. Particularly in times of crisis, this falls very heavily on your shoulders as a leader. To be able to illuminate a vision that you are still trying to visualize yourself is a challenge. And yet, when you have a clear vision, when you're able to focus on yourself, to focus on the goals that you know need to be accomplished, sometimes in short order, as we've been doing now, you are more able to illuminate that vision even as you're working through it with your guiding team members. That's very important. If you're able to work through and create a vision while simultaneously bringing that awareness of the vision to other team members, you are not necessarily relying on them. However, the burden that you are carrying in creating this vision while simultaneously implementing the vision, which is what occurs in times of crisis, becomes supported by the trust and the faith that your team members have in you. While you illuminate the vision, they are able to see clearly, and if nothing else, offer you faith and trust in where you are guiding them, so that you're not in conflicting viewpoints and therefore compromising the whole of what you are seeking to move towards while preserving what you already had. Montessori leaders are within all of us. We encompass heads of schools, directors of education, curriculum directors, directresses, guides in the classrooms, elementary leaders from the students' perspective, our third-year leaders in our primary classrooms. There is leaders shaping within all of us. And when we connect and understand what our role in leadership is and how in turn we can foster leadership within our team members, and now in this time of crisis, leadership of the classroom curriculum and of their children's uh, educational guidance or direction, bringing that leadership, that Montessori leadership into your families, into your parents as well. So when you think about in our classrooms how often we refer to our students as leaders, we also need to consider looking at each individual person, whether it is a student, a parent, or a curriculum director or a guide, also as leaders. Leaders do not need to compete with one another. Instead, they get to work in collaboration, which leads to innovation. And when you're leading in crisis, to be able to move forward with innovation, to maintain and ideally grow your communities in crisis, this is very critical for each and every one of you. Maria Montessori has a quote that says, if education is to be perceived along the same antiquated lines of I think it's the regurgitation or the something of knowledge. I played with that a little bit, and I described it as leadership. And if leadership is to be perceived along the same antiquated lines of leading a group of people or an organization, there is little hope for the growth in our Montessori schools for the future. And what I mean by that is if it's only a leader and everyone is falling behind us, then there is very, very little hope to open and broaden the scope of what Montessori can be, not only for our personal school communities, but for education at large. So it's important to revisit leadership within yourself and within your team members so that your school has a larger opportunity to grow into a future that maybe in the past we've only imagined. When we think of how to undefine leadership, we've always seen it before as somebody that stands in the middle. They're very clear. People recognize them, they see them, and they follow them. What happens when, as leaders in your classrooms or leaders in your schools, as head of schools or curriculum directors, what happens when we revisit leadership? What happens when we look at it as we look at our kindergartners, for example, our kindergarten age student, our third-year students in the classroom? They're not always visible. They're moving with purpose. They're often somebody that we look at or other students look at and just learn from observation and feel fulfilled by, inspired by, and yet those third-year students are always part of the group. And when we look at undefining or redefining leadership, we want to embrace that idea of a leader being integrated and part of the community. Because when a leader is too visible, people fall back and they wait. And a key component of innovation gets lost. We no longer have collaboration when it's solely the leader in the front. What happens when the leader is so strong that the team becomes complacent in following? That strong leader has more narrow selections of destinations to take their school, where the responsibility only falls on us. Everybody only trusts what we're saying. We're so strong that everyone who, whether they trust or not, believe that their voice needs to step back and only follow one vision. That vision becomes so narrow that our schools can't breathe. And if they can't breathe, when we move into this time of crisis and there's only one person making all of the decisions and moving forward, then the ability to do so successfully while meeting the needs of everyone, including the leader themselves, becomes compromised. That leader will, it will become too heavy on their shoulders. And what we've spent so long building and trying to preserve, particularly in our Montessori schools, becomes even more compromised for ourselves as leaders, for our team members, for our students, and for our families. That's when I urge you, particularly in times of crisis, to look at leadership from within. That leadership from within not only means seeking inside of yourself what it is you have to offer, how you're feeling and pulling it all together. It means leading from within a team. And you can still be the leader while absolutely walking with your team, communicating directly in almost every moment and thought process so that they're aware of what's happening, they can collaborate, and through those conversations and collaboration as you're leading within your team, intersections form and allow, particularly in crisis, visions or opportunities to move forward and create something actually bigger and better than what you had prior to the crisis. It allows a sense of security, and it also inspires your team members to join in the movement, particularly in crisis time where it's so easy to give up, to be drowned by the feelings of fear or insecurity or innumerable emotions. Really, when you're leading within your team, they're experiencing the same emotions. They're seeing from you an honesty and an integrity in facing the emotions while still working towards a goal that is necessary and must be done in very short order when we're in crisis. There isn't enough time to wallow. There isn't enough time to look backwards and see if your team is there with you. When you're working within your team, not only do you move more quickly to solve the crisis, you're also working with them to find bigger and better solutions to the ideas you have in moving forward. So always strive to lead within your team and have them part of the leadership. So what is the new definition of leadership? Patty McCord, who is the former chief talent officer from Netflix, which I'm sure you've all heard of, was quoted as saying, organizations need to completely rethink what they are about and what it means to lead. It's not about one person or even those residing at the top anymore. In today's world, everyone has to adopt a leadership mindset. We have to think of ourselves as members of a leadership community. Montessori is already that. That is exactly what we foster in our classrooms, from our infant and toddler communities, our primary communities, our elementary communities, and probably most exceptionally so in the adolescent communities. We are fostering leadership. We're fostering communities that respect and understand that every person's role in that community is pivotal and important, whether you are the farmer or you are the banker, whether you are the father or you are the child. You have a voice and you have a contribution to make the whole grow, to make the whole steady and stable, secure for everyone. And it is in that type of leadership community that joy is able to abound. And when you're working in joy, you're also able to work with purpose. And it's a recognition when we look into our classroom to remember, as we're leading with our teams, when we're leading with other team members, whether they're our guides or our assistant guides, our assistants in the office and administration, whoever the different roles are, when we're leading together as a community, we are able to work with better purpose. We do not have to be in conflict. That's not leadership. Leadership isn't everybody is going in their own direction and a few may follow here and there. That is chaos. It's the one thing we avoid in our classrooms. We're always setting the boundaries so that leaders can grow. Independence, creative ideas, all based on logical thinking and problem solving with this thirst or hunger for more knowledge. This is what has to happen in our administrative teams and our leadership of the adults in our school community, to be able to come together, recognize and appreciate the different roles and the viewpoints, so that as we sit here in crisis, it is the different viewpoints, the vision that I might see as the head of school, along with the leadership that the guides are particularly doing directly with our distance learning platforms. I need to see how their leadership is interpreting the vision that I have, so that we can all work together to continually grow through this. So as the crisis begins to abate, we're in a better position to reformulate and reset our school, not just back to the normal that we had, but a new normal that is greater and more successful based on what we learned together as a leadership team. In keeping with that, when we think of leaders as visionaries, in corporate America, there are the C-suite, they call them. There are so many chiefs: the chief executive officer, the chief financial officer, the chief operating officer. And there's a reason, I believe, that they all have that similar and respectful leadership title. It's an understanding and respect that with each of the specialties that the individuals have in leadership, that they can still work as a team for one solid vision. That vision's always growing and can only be better with a collaborative team that works together, that comes from so many different varied backgrounds or expertise, which again is what we have in a Montessori community. The expertise of our leaders in our infant and toddler communities versus our primary communities or elementary and adolescent communities. Those leaders have expertise with their very specific communities and age groups, and coming together and respecting the expertise and the direction that each leader is going in, allowing them freedom to thrive and put into place through their expertise the overall school vision is the most successful avenue for your school to not only survive every day and in crisis, but to also stand apart from any other schools, because your school begins to have a personality that extends beyond simply the Montessori method, which is extraordinary in and of itself. But when your school breathes in its passion, when the group of leaders, while working in everyday and in crisis, have a direct understanding, support, and a driver's seat for some components of the vision of the overall school and of the overall leader, then your school is only going to shine as the exemplar of schools in your area. As you think about working with your team, particularly now in crisis, make sure you meet daily. We meet twice a day. We're in school for two and a half hours a day, and yet we meet twice a day. And oftentimes the conversations do not seem like they have anything to do with what we're doing in our distance learning platform, with what we did in class that day, any relationship to curriculum. And yet the conversations that are rooted in trust and honesty, they're very open conversations, whether people want to discuss their dog or they want to discuss their feelings from the night before, which almost hindered them from going into their Zoom classroom that morning, whether it's talking about curriculum, there becomes intersections or opportunities for intersections as we're discussing one thing with an openness and an honest interest in the conversation, where your minds are open to all of the different directions these daily team meetings can lead us. We allow ourselves to innovate, to collaborate, and create. And at this time, when you're leading in crisis, to be able to focus your visions and innovate. even as you move forward and try to solve what's currently pressing, to be innovative, to collaborate with your team, and to be able to create through the daily conversations you have, through the daily interactions, through the daily meetups that recap what they've been doing, how they've been planning, you can be assured that not only will your school survive, not only will your students and your families still receive from you what they've invested in and what you have always dedicated to give them. You can be rest assured that through this time of crisis, your team will be closer and more effective than they ever have before. So in innovation, you look at the expertise of everyone and your brain is a buzz. And that's where your team, this leadership team, comes in. It's a focus on everyone believing and trusting through their own unique gifts, through their own unique expertise, that the goal is creating something new. It's not a fear of what we're losing. It's not a fear of what you had that was so successful that you do not want to change. It is a working together towards innovation that is on the foundation of what you had that was successful and yet is changing due to circumstance or crisis as we're experiencing right now, and moving forward with direction, with vision, but with innovation with your entire team. So when you think about being innovative, even as you're scrambling or struggling to make ends meet right now in a crisis, you want to remember that the light bulb moments, which are great, always burn out. The light bulb burns out. What do you do with that imaginative or creative thought moving forward is what allows something to grow. And that's what your innovative thinking team does. It takes the light bulb moment and it plants a seed. And as Montessorians, we know our goal is not to teach, but it is to plant a seed so that the child can grow their garden. Likewise, as leaders, what you're looking to do is to plant the seeds of the vision you have through crisis, through your everyday, into the hearts of all of your leaders, your guiding team members in your community, and with them, plant the garden that becomes your school as it is in crisis, and the garden that continues to thrive and grow beyond that crisis. And that garden is going to look different every year because the soil is different every year. The crisis is just a different, what do they call it? When you have the soil delivered, we got a different batch of soil, but we can still plant the garden. The seeds are always the same, and it's with our innovative thinking teams that we plant those seeds and still move forward. So what makes a great leader? A great leader is within each and every one of us. A great leader isn't necessarily the most organized, person that can make all of the charts and figures. That's a phenomenal manager, and that's going to be a great leader, leading member of your team. However, a good leader, a strong leader, has clear communication. You're able to speak to everyone, regardless of how you're feeling or they're feeling, and still find a way to communicate. You're a good example. You lead with recognition, with inspiration, and with integrity. You need those components in order to be that good example. I will be as raw and honest with my feelings as I will be in my strength and in my determination. I will stimulate my team members. I will provide a stimulating work environment. I will always walk and share my clear vision with everyone that comes into my path. It's not just with my leading team. The vision that we have needs to be visible to everyone that hears about us. I focus on my team as a good leader. I offer support, and by focusing on my team and offering support, your team members will focus on you, and they will offer their support to you as well. You provide them with clear goals and with encouragement, and your team members will not only help you move your vision into a reality, they too will become good leaders, great leaders for the rest of their school community. We will end with intersections. Intersections are the key to collaborative, innovative learning and to success. If you are a visionary, if you are a strong leader, if you have a hope and a goal through this crisis, through every day, and for your community long into the future, look for the intersections. Those intersections will occur with your guiding team members. It will occur with your families, with your parents, with your conversations with students. It will occur when you have a random conversation as you stop off in the gas station. Look for intersections that provide inspiration that leads you to collaboration to grow your vision for your Montessori schools. Thank you so much for joining us.
We got some, we got some questions, so
we have some questions.
Give us a moment. There's a Q&A. Do we meet twice a day with the whole team or all of the staff?
Right now in crisis, we meet daily before and after our Zoom meetings. We meet every day with our students, so 2.5 hours a day. And we have 15 to 20 minutes before we go on to open our Zoom rooms, and we have a recap of the day. So everyone that's running a Zoom classroom, as well as 3 administrative team members, myself as head of school, our director of operations, and our assistant in our administrative team, all join together. So there's, I think, 10 of us, 10 of us that meet twice a day.
Now we also had yep. Apologies for not being able to see the bottom of the slides. You will receive a copy of the whole deck. It's going to be interactive and it's going to be beautiful. We had some major technical difficulties. We are innovating into the webinars. So today was the first time, and it went as well as we could make it.
Thank you so much, and we appreciate your input. As we move forward into webinars, in the past, we have either done live speaking engagements as I've traveled around the United States to speak at different conferences and schools. And since we've been in crisis, we've been doing live meetings and Zoom meetings. Moving into the format of the webinar, as Magdalena said, did provide us with some technical difficulties. However, we're positive we will have figured it out by next week's webinar, and otherwise we'll find another format so we can get you the support and encouragement that you need as you continue to move forward, since we do not know what the timeline of the next few weeks and months is going to look like.
And don't forget, next week is all about talent. So if you want to find out how to hire and have the best people on staff, make sure you tune in.
Magdalena is amazing and passionate at hiring the best in class talent, and really has made an extraordinary change in our school. And we'll have a lot to share with you and everyone you know on really not just hiring the best in class talent, but fostering it within the teams that you currently have as well.
Oh, will you receive a certificate? We have not thought about it, but yes, that is brilliant. Yes, you guys will get the certificate of the training.
Absolutely. We'll be able to put together over the 6-part series, 3 units for continuing education. Right now, they won't be affiliated with any university or training program directly, but they will be able to be used for professional development hours, not necessarily credits.
Thank you for asking that question. That's brilliant. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate you bearing with us, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.